How to manage a construction project during the superstructure. In this video, I'm going to talk to you about the key considerations that we need to have at the top of our mind when we're managing the project during the erection of the steel or during the concrete phase going up for the superstructure. There's some very key things that we need to look out for, and if we have these main keys, we should be okay as long as your company has a pretty good project management system, good team, and you know what you're doing. So in this video, I'm going to talk to you about the 6 main things that pop out to me, and I hope you enjoy it, so stay with us. Okay everybody, I'm stoked about this one. We've already done a video about how to run a project during the first few days, during foundations. Now I want to talk about the superstructure. So I'll lean on my experience as a career superintendent with this, but let's go through these one by one. Okay, so when you're doing the superstructure, let me just go ahead and draw just a typical building, right? You are going to have to make sure that you have, not only for the project, that you not only have your crane, right? And that you're able to hoist, but you also need to make sure that you have your hoist itself, your buck hoist, your material and labor hoist going up and down the building. So you need to make sure, oh, and you need to have obviously access for your pumps, right? Or you have to have a slick line going up through the building. So the superstructure, it's all about how are we going to go vertical with the building, how are we going to mobilize materials, how are we going to get the steel or the concrete where it needs to go, right? So these plans all have to be mapped out. So I'm telling you early on, you can't be early on enough with your design and the design of the foundation for the hoist. You can't be early on enough with the location and the capacity of the crane and the design of the crane and the foundation. You cannot be early enough when it comes to mapping out whether or not you have the right reach with your concrete pumps or designing the slickline system if you're pumping concrete vertically. Okay, so that's number one. Hoisting, that's a huge consideration. The other thing that we need to understand is that when you have the hoist, you need to make sure that everything is safed off from a fall protection standpoint. You need to make sure that your crane is safed off from the public. You need to make sure that your pumps aren't going to hit any power lines or any other structures. And you need to make sure not only that you have fall protection on every floor, but that if you're doing work overhead and then you're going to do something on the exterior down below, that you have the perimeter netting that's required around the building. So hoisting and fall protection, these are 2 key considerations when we start a building. Okay, number 2, plumb and level at the right height. This is crazy. So when we're coming up the building, it is quite common for the building to either become more narrow or to grow. And the reason is because they keep going from level to level, lasering up the building. Let me actually draw this for you, right? So they'll say, here's level 1, and then they plumb up and they build level 2, then they plumb up from level 2 and to go to 3. And what happens is the decks will get smaller, I'm dramatizing this, or bigger and bigger. The way to fix this is when you plumb level 1, you go to level 1, you plumb level 2, you go to level 1, you plumb level 3, you go to level 1. You always have to take your lasers or your plumb bobs all the way down to level 1 so that you're going plumb all the way vertically up the building. I have seen multiple structures get out of whack with the elevations on their decks because they're just using a laser level. They're not actually up there with an automatic level. They're not checking elevations on all the corners, and because the laser levels have an 1/8 of an inch and 100 feet tolerance, plus or minus, and then you take into consideration the vibration of the columns or on the deck, you'll have literally decks that slope up 1/2, 3/4, 1.5 inches from side to side. So we have to have good field engineering control going up, and we have good field engineering control for the level of your decks, right? So make sure that that's key. The other thing is when you're coming up a building, what you have to do is you can't just take elevations from floor to floor. I recommend, and actually this is Wes Crawford, that you actually chain up a column or a tower crane, and that's where you get your elevations all the way up the building. And again, you can be too short or too tall from floor to floor if you don't do that. So make sure that you have the building plumb, that it's level on every floor, and that it's the right height because you're transferring elevations up through the building properly. Number 3, the logistics with people and materials. One of the things that is constantly mentioned by high-rise professionals, and I'll draw this in blue, is that, hey Jason, you're talking about doing a worker huddle here on the ground with all the workers, but then when they come up through the hoist to go up to these upper levels, it takes them a half an hour or an hour. Well, if you have that, you can get your people up here to the upper levels and do 2 separate worker huddles. Bottom line is, get the people where they need to be, and if you need restrooms up here, provide them. If you need a lunchroom up there, provide it. The other thing is, you have to get your materials there. So making sure that your crane and your hoist are scheduled on a daily basis properly to where we can get the materials where they need to be on time is one of our #1 considerations. And if you do that, you get people and materials to the place of work, we can build it. Number 3, this one has bit all of us. As we're going up the building, it's all about embeds and anchor bolts, baby. Like, I don't care if it's a steel structure or a concrete structure. You can go up and get the structure, you can have the floors there, you can have the columns generally in the right spot. But if you don't have your embeds for your curtain wall, embeds for your exterior steel supports or your exterior steel scrim walls, or if you don't have anchor bolts in the right location for your canopies or for roof structures or for the penthouse, you are in trouble. So you've got to have good control coming up the building and quality control every embed and every anchor bolt as you go up that building. Here's another one. You're tracking the release of things. Typically, we can't start down here at the bottom with priority walls and fire sprinkler until we've placed deck level 5 typically, right? Because we all know that if this is your active deck, as soon as you strip, you only need to have reshores down below, typically 3 to 4 levels. Then you release the reshores, then we can go ahead and start the interiors work. So when you're tracking your structure, we've got to make sure that we're tracking the release of the interiors of the exterior coming up behind it. So that's a crucial component. And then the other thing that I want to say is finish as you go. It won't much matter if you track your release to start interiors if you haven't cleaned up, swept, patch the columns, scrape the floors, patch the ceilings, right? And for a steel structure, if you haven't demobilized, if you haven't racked and plumbed the building and made sure that all of your connections and welds are complete, and then obviously fireproofing on the steel structure to enable this. So we have to finish as we go. I saw a great concrete contractor up in Canada recently when I was visiting a Marcon job. Every time they stripped, the patching crew was in there, they scraped the floors, they patched the columns, they patched the ceiling, everything was swept. I was like, this is remarkable. We need more of that in this industry. I hope you've enjoyed the sketches generally, but when you're in this phase, make sure it's all about hoisting. This is the phase of hoisting. Make sure everything's going up plumb level and at the right height. Make sure you're getting people and materials where they need to be. This is tougher than you think. You might have to do a production analysis of the crane and the hoist to make sure you can even feed those floors at the right pace. Embeds and anchor bolts, if they're wrong, you're going to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars. Make sure that you're enabling the successor activities and finish as you go. Do not let your steel contractor monopolize this site and leave everything unfinished. Do not let your concrete contractor do it either. I don't want rebar around. I don't want embeds around. I don't want floors that are not patched. I don't want anchors or nails hanging out of the ceiling. I don't want honeycomb on columns, and I don't want the cement overspill out of the forms all over the floors. I don't want that. Finish as we go. So these are some key considerations that you can follow when managing the superstructure. I'll turn this into a visual and a blog post and link you to some other videos about the other phases of the project. But if you keep this in mind, you're going to rock it. I hope you've loved this so much that you'll like the video. On we go.